No, I appreciate it, and it's nice to have a chance to speak and to share some of my ideas with a wider audience. I know we have had many conversations during these lockdown periods, so yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity. And just to touch on what Mike said before we get into the presentation, so it's two parts. The first part is around my expectations around what a national team athlete is. A lot of that is my thinkings throughout this lockdown period. I was appointed the Great Britain under 16 head coach in December 2019. And we haven't really had much chance to do anything because of COVID. So this is just a lot of thoughts that I'm getting down on paper and finalizing my ideas around. I've now got a chance to lead a program, what I want it to look like. And then after that presentation is an opportunity for, following on from Jack's presentation, just to be vulnerable. I've got 3 reflection questions that I'm gonna share with people. For those that do want to take part, you'll be in a breakout room with one other person, and it's just a chance for you to kind of make sense of all the information that no doubt you've been gathering throughout this period. So I haven't got a presentation like Jack. I decided to take a different route. I think death by PowerPoint is something that I've definitely experienced over the last few months. So just to make it a bit different, I'm just going to read off the notes I've got. Again, if there's any questions, please put them in the chat box, or you can ask them at the end. It's not a problem. It's going to be split up into like 6 main areas. So there's a piece around culture, there's a piece around character, quality, respect, winners, and then playing level. So those obviously are just subheadings, but I'll try and bring them to life and to make sense of it. So the first part around culture, essentially, what do we want? We want people that you can depend on. We want people that will go and put the work in and essentially do what is required. So it's kind of like that's where, what we want as anyone that comes into the program as a fundamental thing. Are they ticking that box? Now, a lot of that will link into what Jack was saying around relationships, in terms of, are you building that relationship with the athletes you're working with? But as a fundamental thing, like if you, no matter what team environment you're in, whether it's club, national team, if you're working with people that you can't depend on, there's going to be problems at some point. Okay, so it's really important to get that relationship piece right. Understand that we are a co-pilot to the athlete's journey, and we're there to help them. And it's not our journey in a sense. Now, linked to culture, I know there's a lot of buzzwords that are surrounded around culture. I think culture has become a growing topic over the past few years, maybe more so than what it was when I first got involved in national teams about 5 or 6 years ago. And just to narrow it down, what it means to me is it's not necessarily what we say or what we believe, it's what is visual. So one sec, let's let Roberto in. So I can, we're going to have athletes that will say they want to achieve certain things and do certain things. We're going to have athletes that will believe it's their right, or they'll believe they're of a certain level. But ultimately, it's what are we seeing? What am I seeing as a coach? As a coach, what are the assistant coaches seeing? What are your teammates seeing? Because ultimately, it's the biggest determining factor for me and what your culture is what actions are we allowing to happen versus what words are we allowing to be said. Okay, so if we're not doing the things we say we're going to do, well, that's your culture. No matter what fancy phrase you have, no matter what you want to tell your staff or put together in a PowerPoint, what we see is what it is. Okay, so that's kind of my stance on culture. And I've just tried to keep it as simple as possible. So culture for me is actions over words and what is visual. If you ask yourself those 2 questions, that is what your culture is. And no matter who comes into your practice environment or is around your team on game day, that will give them a good indication of the type of coach you are, the type of players you have, and kind of what you allow to happen. Following on from that then is around the character piece, and kind of the characters are, what are we allowing to make up that culture in a sense? So understanding that we want, givers instead of takers, and we want people that will give for each other, give to the program, give to the coaching staff. Like I said before, it's, we're co-pilots, but it's a 2-way street. And that, with the athletes I have at the under 16 level, that's not their end goal. Their end goal is to maybe play 18s, play under 20s, progress to play, basketball in the future. So it's how can we support that? And again, just some of the characteristics linked around that, and, linking to around that piece around who you can depend on. It's, Are they trustworthy? Are they generally just a good person? And do they really understand the value of what hard work is? Linked to that, it's just the notion that it will take 12 players to build your team, but in an instance, one person can break that. So it's just, are you prepared when that happens? Are you prepared to maybe have a difficult conversation, be vulnerable like Jack says, and put yourself in a situation where if there is an issue where somebody could disrupt what you're trying to build, are you going to have that conversation, or are you going to try and avoid it? Now, you play a game of chance. When that happens, it might sort itself out, or it can completely undermine what you're trying to do. All right, so that's just something to be mindful of. And then the last piece on character is just around, and I've seen this a lot. It's appeared on Twitter, it's appeared in various social media platforms. It's a picture where it has like 10 phrases, and it's, these are the things that require no effort. And it's things like, being on time, your work ethic, your body language, etc. I've tried to reframe it, and it's just understanding that, your basketball talent will determine certain things. Okay, so your ability to shoot the ball might dictate how much you stay on the floor. Your ability to play defense might dictate your ability to stay on the floor. But those other things, which people say, don't necessarily require effort, or everybody can do these things, I would play devil's advocate and say it requires a substantial amount of effort to do those things, but it's things that aren't necessarily impacted by your sporting ability. So being on time is a skill that we have to help athletes get better at. Them understanding, their attitude, and empowering them to want to do more, and to understand that by doing more, that might help their development. That requires a certain amount of effort, and we have to be prepared to do that as well. And then the last one just around that is around preparation. Okay, it's, we've got the value of coach education and knowledge. It's how we're helping these athletes to prepare, but it's kind of helping them arrive to that solution themselves. So that's kind of culture and character taken care of. What underpins that character then kind of comes the basketball piece around, the quality that we want at a national team level. In an ideal world, you're going to have players that can pass the ball, that can dribble the ball, that can shoot and can play defense. Now, that's not always going to happen, especially at the younger age groups, but those are kind of like the gold standards that you should be looking for, and I look for as a minimum around, this is what we want. And it's making that clear that this is the expectation, that if we are playing at this level, we should have a fundamental skill set. Off the back of that, we're looking at things like, essentially, as simple as it may sound, what you do is who you are. And it comes back to that actions over words piece. Is I've seen a number of players in the past, and I've worked with a number of players that will believe they're a shooter, will believe they're a lockdown defender, will believe they're great 1v1, or they're really good at the pick and roll, but yet it's not visual and it's not happening. So again, it's, are we having that conversation to improve their self-awareness and make them aware of, okay, you think you're at this level, you're not necessarily at that level, but that conversation is important for them to be aware of it, so you can then put things in place to make sure that they kind of improve and work towards that happening. The reason I put defense in there is, essentially, as you start to go up levels, you are who you can guard. If you're in a mismatch situation and you can't defend in that environment, that will dictate whether you stay on the floor to some degree. And obviously, as you go up higher levels, whether that is, U18 national championships, U20s, whether you're playing pro, domestically, overseas, if you can't play defense, the reality is you're probably not going to be on the floor, because you'll just get targeted. At the pro level, you'll get targeted quicker, and then that will exploit you. So it's just understanding and planting that seed early on with 15, 16-year-olds, like the importance of working on their ability to play defense. And that kind of leads us into like the skill development piece. And this is kind of what's underpinning my thoughts around, what are we going to share with club coaches around what we feel these players should work on, what we're going to share with the players themselves, what we're going to allocate time to, when the players are with us in the program, to they can do this in their own time. And just on that, I think one of the things it's an important question to pitch to players is, what can you get better at when you're not in your team practice? All right. I think the reason I say that is when you go to a team practice, you've got the ability to, compete against a teammate to play, 2v2, 3v3, 4v4, 5v5. When you haven't got that luxury, what are you then prepared to do in your own time to improve yourself? So linked to that, okay, it's kind of broken into 5 areas for me. The first one's around ball handling. As simple as it sounds is, have you got the ability to dribble with your left and your right hand? Are you comfortable going both directions, changing pace with your left and your right hand? If you haven't, then that's an expectation that needs to be addressed. In terms of shooting, I do strongly believe at under 16 national team level, you should be able to shoot. And I'll break that down further and say, as a minimum baseline, can you knock down a spot up 3? So there's no other intangibles happening, nothing else is going on. But if I'm there on the perimeter and my teammate has, caused a dribble breakdown and kicked it, have I got the ability just to catch and shoot? With nothing else going on, I just need to, my feet are set, can I knock that shot down? Once we've got that down, have we then got the ability to hit a shot on the move? So stuff like baseline drive, I'm drifting to the corner. We might have a middle drive, I might be lifting from the corner up to the 45. I might relocate from the slot to the wing. It might be in transition and I'm receiving it over my shoulder. So if we can't knock down a spot up 3 and we can't knock down a 3 on the move, then we sure as hell should not be looking at double dribble moves into step back 3s and coming off of flares, coming off of pin downs, coming out of an elevator screen. So it's just really stripping it back and say that if you can knock down a spot up 3 and a relocation 3, you're going to find time on the floor. Okay, because even if you put yourself around a couple of players that will cause dribble breakdown, you can knock down some shots. And where I saw that the most, like the live example I saw that is the academy I work at. We spent the last 2 years playing in the European Youth Basketball League. So we've played teams from Latvia, Estonia, Belarus, a lot of the ex-Yugoslavian states. And, 10th, 11th, 12th man off the bench can still knock down an open shot. So that forces you to defend in a completely different way because you've got threats on the perimeter. So it's just making kids at a young age understand the importance of shooting and developing a base before we get to the more complicated stuff later on down the line. Outside of that, just have we got to move at 8 feet? So again, if I'm playing one-on-one or we're in, we cause breakdown and there's a guy on my hip, have I got something that I'm confident in I'm going to go and finish with? And when that's taken away, have I got a counter to that? So that might be, yours is, I'm going to drive, take off on 1 foot. Okay, defender takes that away. I might go to a pro hop. Okay, I might go to a Euro step. It might be that my go-to move is what Juan Carlos Navarro used to do, where I get in the lane and it's a runner. Okay, well, when that's taken away, what's your counter? So again, it's just getting the kids to understand, we don't necessarily need 5, 6 things average. It's just what do I do really well and what is my counter? And once I've got that foundation, I can maybe add to that as we start to go on. What's my move in transition? So kind of linking to that ball handling piece, just around, I might be a guy that goes in and out. I might be a guy that goes behind my back, but it's, we want to play up tempo and fast. So if I've kicked it ahead and he's pushing it, is everybody comfortable that they can push the ball? Whether it's, one of our bigs that's got a rebound, can he push it? Whether it's a guard that's got a long rebound, can he push it? So again, it's just reinforcing that everyone has that skill set. And then that's kind of like the baseline level for me in terms of everybody can dribble the ball. Everybody can recognize if I can't shoot the ball when that's taken away and I'm going to drive it, I've got a finishing move that I'm confident in. And if not, I've got a counter to that. And then the last one, which we'll get to with the under 16s, is around ball screens. And I'll go to that as like a level 2 thing, because the ball screen isn't just, the person setting the screen, the person using it. There's a lot more intangible factors to that. So that might be, going back to what I said before about your ability to hit a spot up shot. You could put 3 people that could hit spot up shots around 2 using the ball screen, and your offense will be efficient. But it's then just understanding, as I come off the ball screen, let's say the low man's tagging and the corner might lift behind, I can hit it back, he gets an open shot. So it's then just understanding that. And a lot of this stuff is just, the way I look at it is just try and be logical with it. Okay, if it makes sense, then go with it. If it sounds a bit far-fetched and a bit crazy, then it's probably not ideal to be using with youth players. And I know a lot of the kids will watch NBA and will watch the pros and try and emulate that. But I really do think, my job and, the coaches that I speak to, it's our job to kind of educate them, as you have to have that foundation before you can move to that more complicated stuff, as much as you may want to do that complicated stuff to start with. Just whistling through, the next area is just around respect. So all that skill development stuff and everything that we spoke about, it's understanding the process to do something significant. Okay, so improving as a player to eventually play at a pro level is something significant. To develop a relationship where I can be vulnerable, the players can be vulnerable, we can have those honest conversations, that requires some work. Okay, so it's really important that everybody understands that and everybody's prepared to put that work in. And it's getting that message across to the kids that, you might want to improve this weakness, but that's not going to happen overnight. It might take a year, it might take 2 years, but it's really helping them understand and improving their self-awareness. And the problem you have is, you might be, if you've received players like I do at a national team level, or you're a club coach and you've received players from the under 16s and are now with you at the under 18s, wherever it may be, you might be the first person that has that honest conversation. But have you got the bravery to have it, knowing that the kid, or the female, the male athlete might not like that answer, but have you got the tools to understand how to navigate that? Linking to that is just appreciate the opportunity you have. Okay, and it's just the kids understanding that playing for your national team is a limited opportunity, and there's always going to be players that want to be in that situation that are not in that situation. Understand that you're always going to have coaches that are working for you and that care for you, but don't abuse it. And a lot of that comes back to the first point I made at the start. It's just, are you somebody that people can depend on? Can I depend on you that when you're not around the program, are you doing stuff in your own time that's going to help you, or is it going to hinder you? When you're around your teammates that are not national team athletes, are you going to behave in a way which says, this is why I'm a national team athlete? Or are you going to be the opposite to that? So it's just making them aware of that. The last two areas, linking around that, the opportunity is limited piece. It's just understanding we want winners. In essence, that is just, we want people to commit to just becoming the best versions of themselves, and understanding that by doing that, the results will follow. But it's, are you prepared to, be that same person every single day, whether you're feeling good, whether you're feeling bad, whether you don't feel like that workout today, whether there's stuff going on off the court, are you able to park that aside? And it's just, it's understanding that the games that we play are only a small percentage of your development journey. So it's what you like in the classroom, what you like in practice, what you like in your own time. Because again, with some players, if we wait till we get to the game and they feel like because the lights are now on, they're going to flip that switch. Again, that might only work for a small amount of time, but in the long run, they might fail off. So again, it comes back to that self-awareness piece. And are we going to educate them now? And I think this is the reason I say that is I got asked the question around, what would deem success for the program? Now, as a nation, we play in Division B, and there's a lot of, not necessarily pressure, but there's definitely aims around getting promotion out of Division B to go and play in Division A, which would be a fantastic achievement. But I deem success for the 16s program is how many of those kids will play at under 18s, or how many of those kids will play for the under 20s. So it's about, can they stay in the sport and progress for the future, and not just, it'll be great if we win right now, but then none of those kids carry on. So I really see, because my step is the first on that pathway, about really educating them. And by doing that, it's just them understanding that if we get everybody doing that and everybody committing to be the best version of themselves, would increase the talent, would increase their ability to play, their basketball talent. It would increase the competitiveness around the group. And obviously then in that sense, it will just increase development. But again, underpinning that, there is a difference between saying we're going to do that stuff and it actually happening. So although these are thoughts that I'm putting down on paper, a lot of our challenges are going to be around how do we bring this to life and how do we maintain that. And the last piece is just around playing level. And it's just getting, the players that we have to understand the value of playing your own age group versus the value of being challenged. So it's nice to to be able to do stuff at your own age group and to have the confidence that that brings. And that is important to be able to see you can execute those skills against your peers. But it's for those kids that want to progress, it's understanding where can we challenge and stretch them. And as under, within that, it's, how are you playing versus how are you practicing? And do those two things marry up and align? Teaching players to train at a higher intensity. What does playing hard actually look like? Now, again, the way I try and picture this is we've probably all been there and the players have been there as well. It's just, these are the teams and players that you don't necessarily want to play against. But when you hear you're playing that team, you've got to match up with that player, they're going to give you a really hard time. It's okay, how do you get to be that person? How do we get to be that team? And then the last one is just, their ability to handle pressure. So for me, pressure is around perception. What might put me under pressure might not put Mike under pressure. What puts me and Mike under pressure might not put Jack under pressure. And a lot of that links around, what I kind of frame as the 3 Ds. So disruptions, distractions, and differences. So what is disrupting what we're trying to do? What is disrupting our day? What is disrupting our practice habits? What's disrupting the game? And that could be anything. It could be, my parents bring me to practice and the car's broken down, so that's disrupted my journey. I've come into practice feeling flustered. What's that going to look like? Because that now puts a little bit of pressure on me. Distractions. Okay, players might be really great away from home, and then when they play at home and their friends and family come to watch, that's now a distraction that they've got to navigate. Again, when you play at a European stage, you've got the distraction of you're now playing against better players, and you might start to think, should I be at this level, etc. And then the last one is just differences. What is a difference in their routine, in their game, in the environment? Are you used to playing in England where it's cold and wet, and now all of a sudden you're playing in Montenegro and it's 38 degrees and there's no aircon? That's now a difference which will apply some pressure. But it's about having those conversations and linking back to that relationship piece, just around, if you make players aware of these are some things that are going to disrupt you, this might be a difference for you, this is going to be a distraction, that relieves some of the pressure that they're going into. And just to put it into a basketball sense, scouting's a big thing around that. Okay, if players understand what they're going to go up against, what they're preparing for, that will relieve some pressure as well. So there's a lot to unpack there. There's a lot of thoughts just coming out, but those are kind of some of the things that are floating around my head. But like I've said to Mike before, I think the biggest challenge is, how do you bring this to life? What does that look like? And I think the lasting thing I'll say on that is, no matter what you're planning or what you're looking at or what you're researching about, if it logically doesn't make sense, just don't even bother with it. Okay, like if you're reading it and you feel like this is a bit far-fetched or that's not really relevant for my situation, then you just have to put it aside. Okay, because it's not going to help you in that moment. So that's just kind of the presentation in a nutshell. I'm conscious of time, so I think the plan is, like I said to Mike, we're going to do 2 10-minute breakout rooms. We can do one if people only want to do one. That's not a problem. The 10 minutes will be split between yourselves, so it'll be 5 minutes for speaker A, 5 minutes for speaker B. Okay, so I'll hand it over to Mike in case anyone doesn't want to take part in the interactive piece and wants to jump off. And then that'll give me a chance to set up the breakout rooms for the people that are here. And then I'll share the questions with you and I'll let you unpick some stuff. And I'll shut up and I'll let you have some interaction with each other.
Yeah, so thanks, Troy. Thank you for sharing everything. As we go into the breakout rooms, there will be no recording, so I will stop the recording. So first up, I want to thank both Jack and Troy for doing this and being here and sharing some valuable information on it.